This is a solar powered DC chest freezer. It's made by Unique. This particular model is a 265 liter, 9.3 cubic foot. It's 12 volt or 24 volt automatic. And some of the key features that I like about this unit, it has a very thick insulation. The lid is thick, lots of insulation, LED light, and also glass door sliders. You can see the interior. And right here on the front corner gives you the internal temperature as well as your battery voltage. And in the owner's guide, it goes through some of the features and some of the functions. It all depends where you're going to have this unit. In my case, I've got it in one of my storage sheds that is not heated. Therefore, during winter operation, I'll have to reduce I should say increase the temperature so it doesn't get too cold. Right now I've got it set at -10. If it's not going to be plugged in and turned on, say for example if you're using it at your cottage residence and you're only going to be using it for a few days, you show up at your cottage and you want to get it as cold as you can as quick as possible, turn it up on max mode. It's not recommended to leave it in max mode for extended periods of time, so we switch it over to our eco mode. It also has a range here set for your voltage. It's also recommended for extended periods to have it set on the low. Over here on the side of the unit, that's where the DC compressor is, in behind this panel. This is your plug. It's a 3-prong plug. Comes with an 8-foot cord. And in the manual it also will explain the distance of if you needed to extend your cord, what size wire you should be using. It's also recommended to have an inline fuse. For this particular model, you want a 15 amp fuse. Unique also has on their website a cord that allows you to plug into AC. It is not recommended to plugging directly into AC. This unit will not run. You'll damage the freezer. So what you would do is order from Unique, and they have a particular cord that you just plug in, and it has a converter built in which switches it over for you to allow it to plug into an AC outlet. So my chest freezer is inside this storage shed here. So the 8-foot power cord, what I decided to do, because I didn't have room for my batteries, etc., and I didn't want them in that shed anyways with the DC compressor, etc., so with the risk of spark and those sorts of things. So what I did was, because my other garage is right here, what I decided to do is get some 3/4 poly pipe, and I cut it to length to fit to go up under to the the bottom plate in the wall on this garage. You go up underneath to the bottom of the floor in this shed. So my power cord is actually running in. That way it's not exposed to the elements. You haven't got to worry about rodents and etc. chewing off the wire. So let's take a look inside and I'll show you just a simple basic setup for how I've got this freezer working. Stay tuned. So inside here, what I've got currently are two 100-watt solar panels that are coming into this charge controller here. This is a very inexpensive charge controller, and it was one that I had kicking around way back when I first started incorporating solar here at my off-grid cabin. So with this laying around, it didn't cost much money, but I mean they're about $100 anyway to purchase. So, and this is on its own power supply. I'm on solar power here at my cabin, but I wanted this chest freezer to be on its own solar setup, so it's independent from the rest of my cabin. Having said that, you can definitely wire it, incorporate it into your existing battery bank and solar power. So basically this is a 12-volt charge controller, by the way. So my two 100-watt panels are coming into my charge controller here. As you can see, the current voltage is 13.3, 13.4. I'm not sure how many amps are coming in now because the batteries are pretty close to full. And about 6 amps are coming in currently. And nothing is tidied up here as of yet, folks. This is just set up just within a matter of a couple of days. So, and here I have two L16 6-volt batteries that are wired to make 12 volts, and they're about 400 amp hour each. It is recommended to have this as at least a minimum for you want a significant battery bank. Batteries are the most important part about solar power. So this is pretty straightforward. I've got alligator clamps. They're rated to hold up to 50 amps power, so I've got those coming from the charge controller, so I can quickly disconnect if I want to. And the same thing, the power cord that's coming in up through the floor here from my chest freezer, that's my power supply. I can also disconnect quickly with these alligator clamps. So and as I said earlier, I have two 100-watt panels that are currently providing power to the specific battery bank and chest freezer. It's that panel and this one on the end. In this illustration on page 9 with the DC power connection, it says this freezer must never be connected directly to any AC power source. If you plan on doing so, you must have the converter, which Unique does sell with their DC powered deep freeze like this one. And as well to mention, it can be connected to a 12-volt or 24-volt battery supply, and it automatically detects, therefore there's no need to make any adjustment to the freezer. As with all DC connections, red to red, which is positive to positive, and your black to black, which is your negative. On page 10 in this illustration, which comes with the operator's guide, it talks about the fuse. The fuse is very important. It's a critical part of this unit to save it from any damage. And with both 12-volt or 24-volt operation, it requires a 15 amp fuse. Cable size is very critical as well when it comes to connecting. I've had a few questions on my other videos regarding the solar fridge that I have here, and The issue, obviously, with most people that have cottages or are living off grid is that their battery bank is not inside in their cabin, in their cottage. It's either out in a storage shed or outside in a protected case. So therefore, the distance of cable needed to connect these units is very important. So they do come with a guide here that shows. As an example, my freezer that I just showed you in this video, right now it's currently connected to a 12-volt battery system. Therefore, I am limited with regards to the distance of cable that I can use to tie into my battery bank direct to the freezer. Right now, currently, I have about 12 feet of 10 gauge, so I'm within limits, as you can see here with this chart. One thing that I should probably mention is what I've noticed with the 12 feet of wire, the voltage display on the deep freeze itself, when it's in operation, is about 0.5 to 0.6 volts lower than the actual, which is showing where the battery bank on the charge controller is. So, but it is important. There's a low voltage disconnect with this system. It automatically will cut out at 10.4 volts on a 12 volt operation and 22.8 volts on a 24 volt operation. It will automatically restart once they get to a certain percentage higher with voltage, 11.7 with 12 volt, 23.4 on the other. In my opinion, the low voltage disconnect is a little bit low. They say this to protect the batteries from experience too low of a discharge. I personally like to keep my batteries at least 50% rate of discharge. Sometimes I won't let them discharge any more than 30%. And that's my personal opinion. I feel the life of the battery, which is a costly investment for most of us off-grid, it's important to protect our batteries. So in my opinion, I feel that the low voltage disconnect settings are a little bit too low. And on page 11, it just gives you the instructions about once it's connected with the power settings on the display on the front of the unit, like I shared. You basically just hit the set button and you can adjust your temperature. One thing to keep in mind is if you had it turned off for a significant period and you just show up and you want to turn it on, there is a max mode that you can set, and that will basically boost the temperature down to its freezing point much quicker. Once you get down to the operating temperature that you desire, then you turn it back to its low mode, and it says it takes about 4 hours, but this particular unit, this 9.3 cubic foot chest freezer, it literally was down to minus 23 when I used the max mode. It was down within less than an hour. So that's something that's a bonus with this unit. And as well, over on page 12, opening and closing the lids and proper care, all that stuff, normal operating sounds. You're going to hear gurgling sometimes with these compressors, and it's completely normal. And it's once you get used to using these DC appliances, they basically they're a sound that's similar to other DC or other AC appliances, only probably a little bit quieter. That's one thing I've noticed with these unique refrigerators and freezers, that when they are running, they're actually fairly quiet. If you plan on turning the power supply off and you're leaving the unit that's not going to be used, proper defrosting is something to keep in mind, and it basically goes through the steps of important on how to defrost it properly, and you can do a rapid defrost once the unit has been unplugged. That's why I use the alligator clamps, the alligator clips on the battery terminals. It's much easier for a quick disconnect, not only just turning the unit off itself, but I guess secondary safety is to disconnect it from the battery supply. So, but basically you can use a bowl of hot water, not boiling water, just hot water, and place it on a dish towel place it down on the bottom of the freezer. You can close up the lids and check in about a half an hour to an hour's time. And once it starts letting go on the sides of the unit, it comes with a plastic scraper, and I recommend only using that plastic scraper. Otherwise, if you decide to use something else, you may damage the unit. Cleaning as well, just use mild soap and warm water. Don't recommend using any bleach solutions, etc. As well, it also gives a description with energy saving tips. And I do encourage that if you're going to be installing it in an uninsulated shed like I have during the summer months, it may be significantly warmer, and you want to make sure that it's not exposed to direct sunlight. So in the future, I do intend on insulating the storage shed that it's in right now, and I'll be using a poly bead to insulate. So relatively inexpensive and a simple solution to keeping the shed much cooler during the summer months. During the winter months, I'm not concerned at all. It gets down to about minus 20 degrees Celsius here, and so I'll be monitoring the freezer on a regular basis to ensure that it doesn't get too cold. And when it does get too cold, I'll be obviously turning up the temperature that it's set at. I also have it at least 4 inches away from the walls. And these DC fridges and freezers, they do require a significant amount of clearance in order to allow for the heat from the unit to escape. And it will improve the efficiency of the appliance, and it won't be consuming as much battery power. Here are the technical specs on this UGP 265L1, the 9.3 cubic foot deep freeze. It's significantly light, actually. I was surprised at the overall weight. And it gives you the total watt hour draw with 24 DC. And it's 627 watt hours per 24-hour period, set to minus 16 with an ambient temperature of plus 25. And that's pretty good. And the power consumption, when the compressor is running, it consumes 69 watts, which is very little. AC equivalent appliances to this size would be running at least double that. And it also gives the average run current, and this is also important for giving you an idea on if you are going to be using a converter that you want to plug it in to, say, an AC outlet that's not supplied by Unique, then on a 12 volt setup, then obviously it's going to draw close to 6 amps. So you want to have a converter that's at least 15 amps to allow, because like I say, there is a little bit of an extra load when it initially starts up. And the freezer temperature range, like I say, from minus 18 degrees Celsius to plus 10. So if you don't want to use this unit for a freezer, it can also be set to use as a refrigerator. And where it's a chest style, it is much more efficient than the upright. So this concludes this video with regards to my Unique chest style freezer. And like I say, it's only been running for a matter of about 3 days right now. And I will be doing updates with this particular unit along with my refrigerator, Unique. The both models, I'm impressed, and with regards to price, there is significant cost savings, especially if you already have solar power established at your off-grid cottage. Pros and cons of this unit. The pros, obviously, the efficiency, and I like the fact that you do have the option of 12 volt or 24 volt setup. the fact, like I say, that it's super efficient. They are very quiet. Unfortunately, the cons, one con with regards to this particular unit is that you do have to purchase the converter if you wanted to plug it into an AC outlet. I do feel that Unique kind of let the ball slide here. They could have provided that with the unit rather than having to purchase afterwards. If you go online, it's I think in Canadian funds, I do believe it's I think retailed at $130. So it is a significant amount of money extra to pay for a unit if you wanted to plug it into an AC outlet. So other than that, there aren't too many downfalls with regards to these units. Like I say, proper care, proper maintenance, keep them clean. Don't let dust build up on them. And as well, you want to be careful because the metal that's on the casing on the exterior of them is very thin, and that's why they're light, and they can be dented quite easily. So, but other than that, you know what? You do purchase these products. They're significantly cheaper than if you were to be using propane appliances of the equivalent, and they're also an option for energy savings. So, as always, take care, and thanks for watching.